In this video, we'll be reviewing altcoin targets for the final run of this cycle. In the midst of what is some of the worst sentiment I've ever seen in crypto, I truly believe that this cycle has a setup for a massive finish. In fact, so much so that a run like 2017, in my opinion, is still on the table. To put it into perspective, back in 2017, the months of May to July were all the way down here. And yet, in the span of just 23 weeks, just 6 months, Bitcoin got this much damage done. I believe that the final 6 months of this cycle in 2025 will show some very big results. So much so that my targets for a Bitcoin by the end of this cycle are 150,000 to 200,000 at the very least. I truly believe that since the bottom, Bitcoin was destined to make this type of move. And only with the completion of this move would we then get the infamous altcoin season to follow. Ask yourself, if Bitcoin was destined to top at 180k in November of 2025, why would we get the altcoin season in March 2024, in November 2024, in July 2025? Instead, what's happened is Bitcoin has been going up, completing that process, carrying altcoins up with it, but not allowing for that outperformance because frankly, it just wasn't time. To me, this checks out and is how I'm going to be going about things for the next 6 months. You can say whatever you want, but this idea, as crazy as it sounds, cannot be invalidated. Because again, even with the worst sentiment ever seen in crypto, Bitcoin is currently knocking at all-time highs yet again. That being said, one assumption I don't want you to make is that it's going to be a straight shot from here. I can very easily see Bitcoin go up perhaps a bit higher before it dumps a bit into a summer lull and then ultimately continues that move. I bring this up because if I give targets in this video and we then dump in July and August, I don't want you to think that the run is over or that it's not going to happen. Remember, this is a process. You could have had the mentality that it's over on each pump up, and yet, again, Bitcoin is knocking at all-time highs. I believe the saying is trust in the process. So that is what we're going to do. 6 months is not a long time. So I want to give some of my final cycle ending altcoin targets, which you can possibly reference if you hold these coins now or are looking to get some types of returns in the near future. In crypto, eventually, every single trend reverses. The only one that I have not seen reverse is Bitcoin USD make a new high every cycle. Other than that, every pattern eventually reverses. I bring that up because the conviction in a specific trend strengthens as it reaches its extreme. Right now, the one we're seeing is the one that we won't get an altcoin season and that Bitcoin dominance will forever persist strongly. This belief is becoming more profound the higher and higher dominance gets, where you best believe that if dominance does end up touching the numbers of 68, 70% and beyond, it will probably become consensus that we're not going to get an altcoin season, that dominance won't fall. But from my experience, I found that it's when the extremes are met that it's probably best to get ready to shift your bias to the other side. For example, XRP. The coin accumulated for 2 years, but before that, when it had its expansion after what was a 2-year accumulation, it made a lower high. This cycle, a lot of people wrote off XRP. It was seen as dead. But this is not a singular cycle event. This is a decade-long pattern playing out. XRP being a relic and a ghost coin has been thrown out the window, and now it probably does very well by the end of this cycle. This is exactly why I'm very bullish on ETH, actually. ETH, I think, by far has been the most hated thing this cycle, specifically. Now, if you had said even just a couple months ago, when ETH got down to 1400, that it would make all-time highs, you'd be seen as crazy. The hate became so profound that I had no choice but to ultimately bet on the opposite side. Now, I would even go as far as to say that ETH probably gets to 6 to 8k at the very least. I think a 10k ETH this cycle probably happens. When again, just a couple months ago, we were at that absolute extreme of Ethereum hate. But again, everything in crypto switches trend. For crypto over the years, the idea has been that altcoins outperform Bitcoin. That trend also flipped. Bitcoin has been absolutely annihilating altcoins this cycle. So that trend has switched all the way. But I feel like personally, we're almost near the end of that trend as well. And that for this cycle, the overwhelming, robust, strong trend of Bitcoin outperformance of altcoins will eventually reverse, to where we get strong, persistent altcoin outperformance versus Bitcoin. Whether it happens now or by the end of this year or bleeding into Q1 of 2026, I am so confident that that will happen by the time this cycle is over. The other big point you'll see is that Bitcoin ETF money will not flow into altcoins, and that because of that, we will never again visit the range lows of where Bitcoin dominance used to get during altcoin season. To which I would absolutely agree. I agree. ETF money won't be poured into altcoins. But one thing I will throw out there is that in November of 2024, when we got what was a pretty big altcoin run, dominance during that time dropped from 61 to 55%, a 6% drop. And my argument is that with this 6% drop, altcoins did a lot of gains. Even though those 2 months of November and December were nowhere near the altcoin seasons of 2021 and 2017, I would bet that at this point, you would take absolutely anything for a drop like that to happen again, because you know you can pull off a solid 3 to 5x in that environment. So what I'll say to those ETF money people is that yes, ETF money won't go into altcoins, but a part of that Bitcoin market cap, which is a tremendous market cap by the way, so much liquidity, will go into altcoins. So Bitcoin dominance may continue going up, maybe up to 70%. But if a 6% drop caused a pretty decent run at the end of last year, I would maybe like to ask, what would a 20% drop once this cycle concludes do in favor of altcoins? To which I would answer, probably a lot. Now, it won't be an everything goes up 10x during that time type of altcoin season. Performance will probably vary. Most altcoins will do probably, I think, on average, a 3x. I think a good amount do a 5 to 10x, and I think a decent amount do over a 10x overall during this drop. It is going to be a pretty good altcoin season. Again, maybe not like 2021 or 2017, but I guess, that also makes sense. In 2021, that was the first real retail cycle, the biggest singular mass adoption cycle we had in terms of normies going from not knowing what crypto is to buying it, and also them having money to blow. We'll never see that combination again. And then in 2017, the combination of the ICOs and how illiquid coins were, and the fact that coins were coming out, altcoins that you could just buy, and they went up. We're not going to see that again. But I still think we see something pretty damn decent. And so with that being said, I'm now going to talk about a few altcoins and the targets I think they hit by the end of this cycle. Now, I'm going to make this a series over the summer to cover different altcoins, the ones I like the most and what my targets are. I will also be personally allocating into a lot of these altcoins. Now, if you feel like up to date you've messed up this cycle and that you would like some assistance for this cycle ending rally, then I have an exclusive Discord group where I've been active every day, preaching a lot of what we talked about in this video, where I will be helping them allocate into these altcoins at the best prices possible for the most gains possible. For example, I am aiming for at least $3 per fart coin by the end of this cycle. It may not happen now in July, but by the time it's all said and done, I do think Fartcoin hits $3 at least. Now in the Discord group, Fartcoin has become a bit of a fan favorite. We were able to get some pretty fantastic entries into it, and if we dip now on Bitcoin in the summer, I feel like Fartcoin could give some pretty decent entries. So again, if you're someone who needs help for buying these lows and then ultimately also selling on the way up, then this is just one of many examples I have planned with various coins. So check that out. There is a link in the description. The AI narrative in crypto has died. Pretty much every single AI coin and narrative has been flipped on its head. It's led to nothing. All these different coins like a Fetch, like a Near, pretty much nothing to do with AI. The AI agents, turns out, just large language model bots, not the biggest thing in the world. Perhaps getting these coins into the billions was not the best idea. Here we are at the end of the cycle, almost, and I think the only coin that stays standing in the AI narrative is BitTensor, as it was always going to be. Now don't get me wrong, BitTensor has so many flaws, so broken on so many levels, but it's still working in that it's still the only thing standing. I think price action wise, it's going to lead to pretty big valuations. It's the best AI coin, but it's not that impressive because BitTensor is not yet this amazing thing, but I would still say that it is the only AI coin, and that I think is a massive trope and one of the reasons I'm still so bullish on it. Now in the summer, if coins do dump Tau could potentially get under 300 again, maybe near 200. But my end of cycle target for Tau for the last how many years will be in the 4 digits. And then we have what I think is the VC coin of this cycle. Now, very similar to the Tau situation, Sui within itself is not the best thing ever. But I do think of all the horrible VC coins that came out this cycle, I do think Sui is the best. I think Sui, by the time it's all said and done, hits $10. Again, it may go down. In fact, it probably does. It's at $3 right now. So be wise in buying those lows. But for the most part, I think Sui does get to double digits. Next up, we have Hyper Liquid. Now, this coin I also gave in my group, but honestly, I'm very bullish hype. I think it has the potential to be the biggest winner this cycle, which is why I showed it so hard to my Discord, and I will continue to do. I think buying the bottom on this one is going to be a bit tough, but I think the upside is most definitely gonna be there. To me, I think if I said everything I said and how bullish I think Bitcoin is and how we get an altcoin season, no matter what people may think, and how hype I think is winning the altcoin race, and that edge it has of being the first to reach 15 billion this cycle, the first new cycle coin to hit that target. Typically, those things keep compounding, and so therefore, I will say that Hyperliquid gets to 3 digits when it's all said and done. $100 per hype at least. That is my target for the end of the cycle. I know how much most have struggled, but I really feel now is not the time to give up. I think it's very unfair to judge an unfinished product. I don't think you can decide what is what in the middle of that process. Therefore, I think this cycle still has an altcoin season, one that is going to be pretty good. Throughout the summer, I will be giving other altcoins and my targets for this finish. And that should wrap up what was a pretty significant and definitely memorable 2022 to 2025 Bitcoin and crypto cycle. Make sure to like and that you're subscribed to catch that content. You don't want to miss it. Now is the time to lock in, not to give up, which so many others are doing. But until next time, take care and lock in.